everybody so very much for being here for the Schomburg Centennial Festival. So first of all, for those with the dry hands, give yourself a round of applause. We're happy to celebrate 100 years in Schomburg.
Dry hands.
This festival, this space of gathering of Black talent, of history and legacies, and happy to be a part of this program with you all today. My name is Snead, out of Atlanta, Georgia. Happy to be here with this panelist. This panel series called Beyond the Stars, looking at the spaces of Afrofuturism and speculative stories in new genres and new fantastic futures. And so I get a chance to be here with the Schomburg Black Comic Book Festival, working in the space of gaming and animation for the futures of Black studies, and would love to just give everyone the opportunity to more personally introduce themselves. We've got a nice intimate crowd here, so we want to make time and give a space for these fantastic panelists to come through and showcase their stories and the time we have together. So with Ibi, we'll start with you first, and we'll go down the panel line. Thank you so much. You just give us a quick introduction of yourself, a couple of, you all have so many amazing works, but just a couple of seminal points about yourself, and we'll get started. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Schomburg, 100 years. I've been on the Schomburg stage several times, and my son just finished Junior Scholars Program, which is a wonderful program for young people. So Schomburg is my home, going back 20, 25 years. I used to go to Hunter College and come up here and not really know how to use the archives, but I just be in here. And going back to the Harlem Book Fair in 2000, remember, up along 135th Street. So there's a lot of history for me in this space, but this is the first time I'm in the County Cullen Library. So my name is Ibi Zoboi. This is my 10th book. I've been writing for my entire adult life, and I am so honored to be sitting beside Sheree Renée Thomas, who published my first short story back in 2004. That was my first traditionally published story, and the first time I took a speculative fiction writing workshop was with Sheree at the Frederick Douglass Creative Arts Center way back when. It used to be on 96th in Amsterdam?
Broadway.
And Broadway. They used to be a center that just focused on writing workshops for Black writers or writers of color. It was amazing, and it's interesting to see that I'm coming full circle. And my latest book, Skin, is based on the first story I published with Renee. So I didn't know we'd be on a panel together, but this is a full circle moment for me.
All right. Oh my goodness, it's so great to be here. 100 years. Obviously, we are celebrating in the rain and the sun, right? The Schomburg Center was my office, like probably for many of you. It's the place I used to go to the archives and research for the first volume, the Dark Matter volume, which is 100 Years of Black Science Fiction and Fantasy. I really trusted the archivist here, and they helped me determine whether or not a book that I wanted to create had actually happened before, and they confirmed for me that it didn't exist. And at the time, it had no title. It wasn't even Dark Matter. It was just Untitled Black Science Fiction Anthology. But I was here with my eldest, Jackie B., who's in the audience, who is now a good grown adult now, wonderful artists themselves, but I used to bring Jackie here when we lived on Strivers Row. So this was home away from home. Very happy to be here today with you all. My name is Sheree Renée Thomas. I'm a science fiction and fantasy writer and editor. I'm a 3-time World Fantasy Award winner, both those Dark Matter books, including the one that Ibi's in, won the World Fantasy Award. It's the first Black author to win that award since 1975 in its inception. Africa Risen, which is our latest volume. We brought in the diaspora and the world, the continent into it. That came out from Tor Books, and that also won the World Fantasy Award, and a 2-time Hugo Award finalist. So I have really loved short stories, which Ibi can tell you. And she doesn't remember, but she was the reason why I taught the speculative fiction writing workshop at Frederick Douglass. It was her ideal. I had just sold Dark Matter to Warner Books, and she was like, "And you're teaching, right?" We were there as students, right? And I just thought, I don't know enough to be teaching. And she's like, yes, you do. Yes, you do. And we went to Mr. Hudson, and he was like, of course, you're going to do this class. And I taught it for 10 years, right? Wow. Yeah, so Ibi is one of my most famous writers. I'm so very proud of her. Love her so much. National Book Award finalist. She's very humble. Also, Daniel Jose Older was one of my students as well. Just so many great people over the years. And the things that I've been writing mostly is fiction, short fiction. So you can find 9 Bar Blues, Stories from an Ancient Future. So hello to Memphis and the South, since we all back in style now with Sinners. And I have a new collection coming out this fall called Mojo Rhythm, which is also great short stories. So if you like to get in and out, those are the stories I love. And I'm creeping my way into the novel space. I've been doing my training reel novel, which was a Black Panther novel. And you can find that. It's called Panther's Rage. And I edit the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. We are 75 years old this year. It's a place where The Dark Tower was first published and Flowers for Algernon and all that great stuff. And I also am associate editor for a Black Arts Movement literary journal called Obsidian, which I love so very much, and we celebrated 50 years. So if you're a writer, come and talk to me.
It's so funny with, talking about the impact that you personally have had on the genre. Obsidian was where I published the short story Still Life with a broom something and a brick stacker, and that was the seed that would become Goliath, which came out in 2022. It started out as that short story that was published in Obsidian. So look at you.
Thank you.
You're like a matriarch here.
No, but for real.
I love the stories, and they're like these are the writers I already knew were amazing. I didn't even know you before that. I knew Ibi because I was in class with Ibi, so I knew she was going to be off the chain. There was no question about it. Same thing I felt about Daniel Jose Older. It's just like when they catch up, when the genre catches up with you, you're going to be ahead of the class. And they did catch up with you all eventually, right? Mm-hmm. And then the same way, Obsidian hadn't really published a lot of speculative fiction, and Duriel E. Harris, our amazing editor-in-chief, was like, she called me. I was a writer-in-residence at Smith College, thanks to wonderful people like Andrea Harrison, who read earlier today. And she said, I want to do something science fiction. I've been teaching dark matter, and I think it would be great to do a special issue. And so that's how that happened. But thank you so much for trusting us with your work.
Of course. No, I could not have imagined a better home for it. So, hi, Schomburg. I'm Tochi Onyebuchi, author most recently of Harmattan Season, fantasy noir set in an unnamed West African city under French colonial occupation. I do mostly novels and novellas, Goliath, Riot Baby, the War Girls series, etc. But I also have done comics. I did Captain America: Symbol of Truth with Marvel, starring Sam Wilson as Cap. I've also done a Black Panther series, Black Panther Legends. But I also do video games. I was on the writing team for Call of Duty Vanguard, and I have to say, as far as top 5 career moments, watching my little brother stream on Twitch a game that had my name in the credits,
all right.
There's no feeling in the world like that. I'm just going to tell you, no cap, there is no feeling in the world. But yeah, so that's a little bit of what I do.
All right.
I forgot to add that Tochi is in my first anthology that I edited called Black Enough. And I only did it, and I was new to the young adult space, and I was wondering, why isn't anybody doing anthologies? Because where we started in speculative fiction, we're trained to write short stories, because there's a huge short story market like Obsidian, and in the science fiction world, it's fantasy, SF&F, Asimov, Strange Horizons,
Magazine, which is all Black speculative fiction.
Clark's World.
Uncanny.
Now there's
Apex,
Apex. So I was submitting to those, and I didn't see that in the young adult space, and which is both contemporary and speculative fiction. So I did Black Enough, only because I was in dark matter and you were in it. So we're all connected in some way.
Yeah.
We cousins.
We are cousins.
And then I didn't mention that I actually wrote a comic book. I'm still like pinching myself about it. I wrote for the Legends comic books for Marvels. And my husband and I are both in the Black Panther anthologies, which were the first ones for that storyline for Black Panther, but also the Captain America, right? The Shield of Sam Wilson. So check those out, yeah.
You wrote for Marvel too? Mm-hmm. Okay, we all wrote for Marvel.
Marvel's just like, you can have a book, you can have a book, you can have a book.
That's not always a good thing.
I think in this case it is, right? So I know a lot of times when we hear the words of speculative fiction, I'd love to just kind of get your, we have just such an expertise here. I'd love to myself be educated as well as talking to our space. We're looking at speculative fiction, the idea of reimagining the past, but also reimagining the future, in a sometimes synonymous, sometimes in a collaborative, sometimes contradictory way. How do you define speculative fiction as we look at the Black imagination, particularly through your works?
Go ahead, ma'am. I learned it
Oh.
from you. Yeah.
I learned it from Sam Delaney. I use speculative fiction because I knew that at the time when I was editing Dark Matter, we weren't writing a great deal of like off-planet stuff, right? A lot of the work that I pulled right off my shelves were speculative fiction in the sense that they were more fantasy-based, or they were more like the things you would see in Twilight Zone or Outer Limits, that kind of thing. More marvelous real, as the Cuban novelist Alejo Carpentier calls it, or more magical realist if you're into Gabriel Garcia Marquez, those kinds of works, and things that are liminal spaces in between the genres. They're horror, they're science fiction, and fantasy all at once, right? So speculative fiction is like an umbrella term that you use for work that is non-mimetic, work that's not based in reality. It has its own system and rules. So speculative fiction can be science fiction, where if you take the science, the science is so important to the story that if you take the science out, you don't have a story anymore. So you can think about time travel stories, or what is it, the H.G. Wells, or those kinds of things, or Frankenstein. You need the science to have the story. That's science fiction. And if you're talking about fantasy, it's more like magic, right? And it can be magic from any culture in the world, but you have your own system of rules that kind of defy physics and things like that. And horror is, of course, creating that sense of dread and fear in your readers, right? That creeping sense of dread. And then all the things in between, right, that you have. So that's how I used it. That's how Samuel Delaney and Marilyn Hacker used it when they did their first anthology together. And I thought it was a great way so I can put what I wanted to in the book.
Yeah, no, it's like I think of it as an umbrella term as well. And like for me, sort of thinking about it a little more philosophically and syntactically, like speculative fiction for me is when you can make the metaphor the reality as well. And so in like a realist novel, you could write the line, "It was like the sky was falling." In a speculative fiction novel, you can literally write "the sky was falling," and there can be, depending on the context of the story, a legit image attached to that. Like I remember, I'll never forget one of the seminal moments in my life as a writer was when I read Akira by Katsuhiro Otomo for the very first time. I was in high school, and I didn't realize, like, because I'd seen the movie, but like it's like 2,000 pages of manga crammed into like 90 minutes of anime. It makes no sense whatsoever. Impossible to follow. But I found the manga in high school, and I started reading it, and there's a point in the story where Katsuhiro Otomo drops a city out of the sky. I didn't know you could do that. Like, that to me is like speculative fiction. The thing, that like ability to completely like just pop the bubble of expectation and just that imagination thing where impossible doesn't really mean anything. Like, that's speculative fiction for me.
See, I had a hard time publishing some of my first work because my speculative fiction was reality-based, which is speculative fiction, but I was writing about Haitian Vodou mythology. And I think there's a denial that Vodou has a pantheon just as vast as Greek or Roman mythology. But I wasn't writing them as actual gods. I was writing them as spirit possession and what happens to your real human self when you are mounted by a Vodou god or a Loa. That's real. Vodouism, people who practice Vodou believe it and know it and feel it and experience it. But on the page, it is speculative. But so I was writing realistic fiction with a hint of magic, but our magic was not magic, it was real to us. So here you have magical realism. And I wanted to push back against that as well because I really wanted it to push the boundaries of fantasy, but make it the real world of the character. So the first the first story I published is about a vampire nanny, old hag or sukuya, but she's not biting, she's not like, like in Sinners, there's none of that. It's an energy vampire. Yeah. So, and that she's a nanny, but she's a tired nanny, and in order to regain the life force, she nurses the babies. And there's no like lights and, all of those magical stuff happening there. Mm-hmm. But I have to describe the idea of pulling on someone's energy. It's speculative, but it's very real. We know what an energy vampire feels like. So this was the challenge early on, and I think I like what you said, when the genre is catching up to you. When the genre catches up to our collective reality as people of African descent, that our magic was our day-to-day.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. Ibi, something you said there, I want to continue onward with the idea of Western structures for narrative. A lot of times we're thinking of just, if we say traditional fiction, right, a lot of times maybe confining for what we see in the African diaspora in our own creative space as constraints. What are some of the practices or maybe techniques or storytelling components in each of your works that you feel like is like a seminal part of your speculative fiction storytelling capabilities?
I'll start. So I think what you're asking is, in what ways do we subvert like that Western narrative? This is a novel in verse. It's a fantasy novel in poems. And I don't think it's brand new. Maybe in the YA space, it's like, what is this? But this is our oral tradition. When we told our stories, they weren't written down in, with paragraphs and indentations and dialogue. We told them in song. We told them in bits and pieces. We had ballads. We had limericks to tell the stories of our creatures and our monsters. So I'm pulling on that oral tradition to kind of subvert the Western narrative. I'm not using dialect in the way that Zora did, but I am using cadence and rhyme and rhythm to suspend belief for the reader.
All right, so how do we subvert Western narratives? One way we do it is through time. A lot of cultures around the world tell stories in a non-linear way. So it's not just like this happened and this happened, or I am the hero or the superhero of the story, right? It's the community that's the story, right? The community tells the story. And so writers I really loved were like Maurice Condé, who had a story called Crossing the Mangrove, or she also did Windward Heights and Segu, other novels. Those novels all have, like the community is telling you part of the story. So you get bits and pieces, and you have to figure out who's a reliable narrator and who's not, right? So time, we play with time, we collapse time. We make jokes about, CP time, color people time or whatever, but it's the real time that we're moving on, because it's time that's connected to nature, right? And that nature is being treated in a way in which the relationship we have to the land and to the earth is more natural and more respectful, right? And so that time, we're eating food in seasons. We are not over farming certain areas. We are treating the rivers like they are persons, right? I think there's a river in Nigeria that was given personhood, right? It's so beloved. And these are things that are part of the normal part of the storytelling sometimes. Dialect tongue, your mother tongue is important. When I first started writing, I thought I had to imitate the famous writers that were already published, right? And so when you do that, you find yourself not writing about stories that are important to you and your community. You're writing imitations of imitations, right? And I thought, well, they have plenty of people writing that stuff. They don't need my voice added to it. Let me be the chronicle of the time that I am in, right? Let me write about the things that I know. And so I think part of us moving out of the Western narrative is sometimes just going home, like going into that space that you come from and seeing that as worthy of an epic storytelling place. And I just want to add that Ibi's talking about, Haitian Vodou and the tradition and pushing back on the idea of magical realism. And it's so interesting because the Cuban writer came up with the concept of the marvelous real because he was studying the Haitian independence movement, and he was a historian. And if you are a trained historian, you know that the tools of a historian are sometimes very different from the tools of a fiction writer, right? And he just thought, he knew that the religion and the spirituality was so important to that it would be disrespectful to use traditional history to tell it. So he created a genre in which the elements that you're saying, the mounting of the loa, those kinds of things, were treated as normal because they were normal for the people. And so he said it's real, but it's the marvelous real. And so we give Marquez the credit, even though he had a black spiritual guide who helped him as well. But it's really looking at Haiti is where we get the term marvelous real. Yeah.
Yeah, what you were saying about time actually reminded me a lot of Marlon James's Dark Star trilogy. I recently finished the second one, Moonwitch Spider King, and it's so good. It's what was really interesting about it is that there's the way that novel covers almost a completely different period of time than Black Leopard Red Wolf. And the entirety of Black Leopard Red Wolf happens in a paragraph in Moonwitch Spider King. I was like, I had to reread it. I was like, wait a second, is that what she's talking about? But that's what you were saying about time reminded me of. To your question, that's sort of what I was trying to do with Harmattan season was I was asking the question, what does noir look like in colonial West Africa? If Raymond Chandler or Dashiell Hammett or G.K. Chesterton or any of the sort of progenitors of detective fiction and noir and what have you had to deal with a character in a colonial, somewhat post-colonial setting, what would that look like? Because I wanted to play around with so many of the tropes. I wanted to do femme fatales. I wanted to do shady real estate schemes. I wanted, how, and there's that, Rush Hour trope, too, where, for the first two acts, you think you know who the bad guy is, and then the Act 3 reveal is that it's actually some, really rich white guy at the top of the pyramid who's been the bad guy all along. I wanted to have fun with that. There were so many, I've been a fan of noir for so long, and I wanted to sort of play in that playground. And I was like, okay, how can I play in that playground and still address themes of revolution, still address issues like terrorism, resistance movements? How can I play around with all these different tropes and still try to find something to say about the colonial experience? And so that's sort of it's sort of like taking all these Western tools and aiming them in a different direction from where they'd been aimed in the past.
Absolutely. And to that, Tochi, the way that you're framing the kind of parallel to your work, Sheree, of time, typically, of course, for Black speculative fiction, the locations is also not only just a location of itself, but a character and a legacy component as well. For Skin, for your two newest works, how does location play into the
Oh my god, it's an integral. Oh my god, like especially for Harmattan season, the setting is the reason for the story. Like there is no story if this gets put in a different country. If this is a story in like the U.S. or in Western Europe, there is no story, because so much of the central conflict, the issue, so much of what everybody in the story is dealing with on an identity basis stems from the fact that there is a colonial power and there's a colonized people. With Goliath, speaking of colonies, that story, I don't know that story, in a way that story could have happened in other cities in the country in that setting, but I wanted to position New Haven as the sort of story hub for quite selfish reasons. Because I knew the city, I lived there, still live there, and I wanted to see if I was too close to be able to write about the place in the way that I needed to be able to write about it to pull this book off. Really, it was a challenge to me, which was why that location was so important. I wanted to. It was like a pride thing. It was like, I bet you can't pull this off. I'll show you. Like it was like that kind of thing. And so that's like location is paramount to me, even in the like ideation phase of a story. Like I can't think of ideas, certainly not characters, absent the sort of earth that they come out of.
For me, geography is a character. So the way that I don't feel like I've known enough about a world until I know the name of the story. I have to know the characters' names first. The naming of the characters makes them real for me. And then I can hear them better, and then I can see them better. And once I have that, and I understand what issue is taking place and what they need and why they can't get it, right? Then I have the name of the story, and that centers and grounds me. Having a sense of the ending, whether they make it or not, whether they survive, whether they get what they want or not. I might not have all the details. It may be very fuzzy, like looking through a hard rain and looking out the window, but I get a sense of it, and that keeps me from writing in a corner, right? It keeps me from writing in circles and circles. I can figure out where I'm going. But then the geography, once I know where the story is taking place, everything takes off from there. So the stories are in mojo rhythm. Geography is so critical to the storytelling. It's amazing. I have an African dandy spy story. So if I'm not in the Congo, there's nothing happening, right? We're in the Congo, baby. And they are fly. They are dressed from the head to the tails. They are on point. And they're doing some James Bond stuff, right? They're whooping you up, and they are fine at it. But Congo is important to it. The food, the everything, the rhythm, the markets, the people, the trash in the river, all of these things are important. Right now, we're fighting the supercomputer in Memphis. And it came like a thief in the night. Obviously landed gentry, set it in motion without any public input, et cetera, et cetera. Our mayor is trying to backpedal and make it seem like it's a good idea. But you can't sell everything for money, right? Your health is not enough. That's priceless, right? And so the geography of where that takes place, it's the place where they always try to put the most horrific things in the city. Boxtown has just fought off a pipeline, and now here comes the supercomputer. Right after the Army Depot had already been dumping toxins there. So geography is so important. Even the story I collaborated with Janelle Monáe on for her fiction debut, which that was great. That was a great experience because she's amazing and beautiful and gracious, and her team is amazing. We worked on a story called Time Box Altered. It's a time travel story. And we wanted to do something that was non-traditional in terms of time, right? And I wanted to center children because people, children are important to everything. And I think sometimes in the genre, they don't give them their credit and their due. But you don't have nothing without the future. You don't have anything without children. And so I wanted to see the future from them. Where that story takes place, it's in a junkyard, from the past when cars were still, diesel and that kind of thing. And that's like ancient history for them. So what does the future look like for these children who are on the outskirts of this world where everything is so technologically advanced, right? And how do they see themselves in the future? The geography, the land speaks to them, the ley lines, the magic of that land, the layers of history, all of that was so important to the storytelling. So geography is the character for me. Yeah.
Same here. Setting is important, especially when we're writing from marginalized perspectives. If I'm writing about Caribbean folklore, I want to set it in Little Caribbean in Brooklyn, which is where Skin is set, because the people there know the language of the folklore. So if a character is accused of being a loup-garou, loup-garou is, well, it's in French, it's werewolf, but in Haiti, because of different religious colonization, that I call it, a lot of things are lost. In Trinidad is Sukuyan. We may have had a Sukuyan in Haiti, but a lot of things gets lost, and what you're left is one word to a catch-all term for everything, because the details of the folklore gets forgotten. We don't keep telling these stories. I remember there's somebody on Instagram who puts old videos and photos of Haiti. And a few years ago, I saw Carnival in Haiti for the very first time in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Wow. It looks very different than the Carnival now. In Haiti, what you have, in Port-au-Prince, what you have is the costuming, and the costuming can be a skirt or caribala or a t-shirt and the band. But in Jacmel is where you have the papier-mâché mask, and it's relegated to Jacmel. But Carnival in the capital used to be just this entire scene of Indian, Native American wear, colonial wear. You have the papier-mâché mask, you had giant stilt walkers, you had this entire world of folklore, but now it's been reduced to just wearing a t-shirt and a fancy skirt and the marching bands. And it's because of religious indoctrination where people are shunning these backwoods stories, and you don't have this elaborate display of folklore and mythology during Carnival and Mardi Gras. So that affects setting, like that affects place and space. So in Little Caribbean, you will have people who know the language of the loup-garou, and I need it to be there. I don't want to take the folklore out of the setting, that it's the space that it's set in.
Oh, got questions.
I think we have just a little bit of time as we look ahead to not only the rest of this festival, but I want to, of course, notate that we have three of the most prominent stars here in Black speculative fiction. I think in fiction and some, here on the stage. So I want to ask, when we're celebrating 100 years of history, here with the Schomburg, what is the future of Black speculative fiction? Where are we in the space where we seem to have, we have the talent, now we have the technology, we have the stories. What do you see as the next horizon for us as we look at expanding Black speculative fiction into new narratives, new spaces?
Oh, wow.
I'll take it. Can we go down?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We can't not talk about Sinners.
Oh,
Sorry, I got it first. I have to be honest. When I first saw Sinners, my first reaction was, eh. You know why? Because I had seen that display already. We've been, I've been writing speculative fiction for 25 years, and if I read Black speculative fiction, that's a century, which what you did, a century of speculative fiction. And I've seen that wonderful scene in the juke joint. I'm like, where have I seen that before? I have seen that on different stages for dance recitals. Some of the Black art schools in Brooklyn, even JSP, we have done this sort of display of historical art making on different stages, on the page, on a stage, but it was the first time maybe that we're seeing it on the screen like this. I remember the juke joint scene in The Color Purple without the magical realism, but if you're reading and if you know your history, you bring that prior knowledge to the screen. But what Ryan Coogler did is show us in plain sight what it is. And the thing is, it's like, I'm glad that new people are discovering it. But for those of us who are creating it, it seems like, okay, we know this, we've seen this before. So going back to the wonderful phrase that you said, the genre is catching up. So to your question, the genre still has to catch up to what we already know. There's so many of us who are doing groundbreaking work that the publishing industry or the comic book industry or the movie industry have not discovered what we're doing. And if we're trying to publish them, there's no context for it. They're like, what is this? We don't know what this is. We don't know how to market this.
What's the comp?
Yeah, what's the comp? So the future, we are the future. It's not publishing, it's not industry that's determining the future of us. We are already ahead of the curve.
Yes. That's right. I would just say, as a Memphian and a Southerner who's have family members from Mississippi, and I'm actually doing a retreat in Clarksdale before the Sinners thing, but Black Pop Mojo, the workshops. We're doing an artist retreat, so get at me if you're interested. It'll be next summer in Clarksdale at the Shack Up Inn from May 21st to the 24th. I actually wept in the movie theater. So yes, we've been doing this. Our grandmama's been doing it. Our great-grandmamas were doing it and practicing the spiritual tradition. I was moved because I thought I was just coming to see a vampire movie. And what I saw was a love letter to Black culture and the contributions we've made. And that's just in music. That's not even in everything else, just in music. And when I saw the ancestors being called up from the past, the ancestors and the descendants being called up in that room, I wept silently. Mike's my husband, and we went back and watched it again twice. And the only reason why I didn't see it when Ryan Coogler came to Clarksdale, thanks to the young people making sure that they did a screening in the place that it was filmed and inspired by, was because we were in New Orleans, which is my other home. Away from home is New Orleans. You got to tear me away to get me out of New Orleans. But for me, the future of science fiction, as Ibi so beautifully said, we already there. We already been there. They're trying to catch up to us. I think what I would love to see, we have survived I think at least 2 different times when people have declared Afrofuturism dead. We have survived at least twice. We're on 3.0 now, right? That the first one was the digital divide, and it was, academics online, listservs, that kind of thing. Ronaldo Anderson, the Black Speculative Arts Movement, came along with the 2.0, right? Open it up globally, right? So we're going to Senegal in September, and there are chapters all over the world. Our biggest chapter is Brazilian, 200 members of science fiction writers, artists, dancers, performers, playwrights, musicians. But to me, the future is distribution. Because as long as you are waiting on publishers, mainstream publishers, to curate what's happening, you're always going to be behind. A lot of Black culture is underground and in the margins and in the scenes. And we're actually controlling the center from the margins. So I'm looking forward to distribution being addressed. The thing that they tried to address during the Black Arts Movement, I see the Black Speculative Arts Movement as the continuation of the Black Arts Movement. Afrofuturism is that wonderful, shiny thing. And we're going to be there in the future. So it's the distribution there, and other artists, independent artists, working together, right, to get their work directly to the people. I think that's going to be very, very important. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think as far as the future, I mean, one thing that I'll be curious to see if it happens is, and this is going to be more about like practitioners than about any sort of like larger, whether it's business or industry stuff. I'm going to be very curious if there's more sort of cross-pollination of technique and study, because that montage, that was like the first, I think, of like 2 moments where I like found myself weeping in the theater. And like the reason for that was that, as was pointed out, I'd never seen that on a screen before. Like, that technique was familiar to me because I know montage. I've seen that thing. I've read that thing in a book. Like, I've read that sequence happen I know what it looks like on the page. I may have even done it on the page, but I have never seen it on screen. Like, I'd never seen that literary technique on screen. And I think that there's going to be more and more of that, particularly as, like, particularly with younger generations having much more access to materials, to books, to movies, TV shows, like music making stuff, like, I think there's going to be more of that cross-pollination, and we may be in line to, within the next however many years, like, see some beautiful artist drop a ceiling out of the sky.
To me, that movie was like Sankofa. The first time I saw Sankofa, it was like Daughters of the Dust. The first time I saw Daughters of the Dust is like the movie version of The Color Purple. And I wept because not only were we already there, but I said they finally caught up with us. Because I know each one of you have been asked, why do you write that science fiction? Why do you write that scary stuff? Or why do you write that weird stuff? And to see it being done respectfully, Dr. Sheree was the advisor on the hoodoo for that. So to see it treated, instead of black cat bones and that kind of thing, but treated as an actual spiritual technology that people didn't question, they followed exactly what she said. And those who didn't, to their peril, that was very moving for me, because it tells me that we're moving in a direction as a people that we need to move to, which is our spiritual traditions, pulling out the negative westernized demonization of it and getting to the roots of it and using it in ways that are uplifting and powerful. So, yeah.
And I want to highlight again other forms of Black art. You said the page. Here's the
Stage
screen.
dancers, yeah.
Like dancers, I think I'm not a dancer, but I will big up those choreographers who are pushing boundaries, like Urban Bushwoman, what do you call Forces of Nature. All of these have done that's what I mean. I've seen that before, because these are scholars. The founder, the director of Urban Bushwoman, won a MacArthur Gene. Her name escapes me right now. It starts with a J, yes. And she has done this boundary pushing what does speculative choreography look like? And then you add stage direction and lighting and scenic drama, all of that. I have seen that. Yeah. We have seen like the plays, George C. Wolfe and the Colored Museum and all of these sorts of other art forms that many of us don't have access to. But that's what I mean, it's catching up. Yeah. So I'm glad, I know that Ryan Coogler got it from somewhere else. It wasn't innovative in that, oh, I'm gonna do something real brand new. Make the technique, the montage, I've never seen it like that. Yeah. But he is reading. Obviously, he comes from a depth of knowledge to be able to say, this is what it is, to throw that in there. The vampire lore, I could have done without. I'm like,
you didn't like the.
Oh, you know what I love? The Irish, the Irish ring
shout.
That was right. So in that sense, I hope we can push the boundary to say, we have our vampires. Is it flesh eating? What do our vampires do?
It's not a hate, right?
It's not a hate, right? Right, she's something different.
About, yeah.
So I want to see us to push the boundaries in the lore.
With that, I think, as you say, as we're pushing new boundaries and new narratives, I want to appreciate the constellation of change that you all are representing, and as we all now go beyond the stars, knowing that we have a new space of navigation to finding universes of our own design. And we want to thank you all so very much for being a part of the Schomburg Festival here, celebrating 100 years of innovation, and thank you all so very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dedren.
Thank you.
All right, Atlanta in the house.
Thank you.
Well, lastly, just real quick, just give us a space where we can find you all, and I think we'll get a picture and we'll proceed. So, Tochi, can we start with you with just a very quick synopsis? Where can we find you in your work?
Certainly. Y'all can find me on Instagram at Trey64. That is TREIZE64. I got a Substack, tochionyebuchi.substack.com. I'm on Blue Sky at Tochi True Story, whatever the Blue Sky thing afterwards is. And finally, my website, tochionyebuchi.com, for news and updates.
Hey, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook under my name, Sheree Renee Thomas. That's SHEREE Renee Thomas with an S. And I'm also on Blue Sky as well, and I'm lurking on Twitter. On the because I'm nosy.
off
I'm
it.
too nosy not to get off. And I got
You
one
don't
child.
need to know what's going on.
And I got one child who only is on there sending me crazy stuff in the DMs. So Black Pop Mojo is like a historic site. Thank you.
I'm Ibi Zoboi everywhere. First name, last name, one word.
And I'm Dedren Snead, out in the rain, Vendors Hall, and also at Subsume, SUB, SUME, Subsume Studios, Subsume Media, out of Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you.